Figure out pretty quickly that just showing up with a hammer is not enough to get a job done right. Before you swing a tool, you have to build a highly detailed schedule. Whether you are a solo DIYer trying to fix up your own place, or you are managing a massive commercial job site, the foundational rules of scheduling stay exactly the same. You have to track progress clearly to know if you are on schedule. Here are the fundamental principles you absolutely need to grasp if you want to finish your projects on time, avoid burning out, and keep your sanity intact while working alone. First, you need a work breakdown structure, or WBS. This means breaking the job down into pieces that make sense. The way that activities are organized provides the entire framework for all the scheduling steps that follow. You cannot just write "build house" on a piece of paper. You need to map out the specific activities required to reach that goal. The WBS acts as a detailed master list of work activities that can be logically organized and controlled. The detail in this breakdown reflects how complex the project is. Next comes job logic. Every construction project is made up of many tasks that have to be completed in a very specific, logical order. How these activities connect to each other and are sequenced together is known as the job logic. When setting up this logic, you have to determine what task comes right before another task. This is called the predecessor activity. You also have to figure out what task comes right after it, which is the successor activity. The goal is to arrange activities to meet your timeline efficiently. The most common way tasks are linked together is a finish-to-start relationship. This simply means that an activity cannot begin until its predecessor activity is totally finished. For example, you would not start framing your walls before you finish pouring the foundation. Getting this linkage right paints a realistic picture of what will happen on the site. Float is basically your schedule's built-in breathing room. In technical terms, it is the amount of time that a task can be delayed without affecting the completion time of the overall project. Having float means you can absorb minor setbacks. If you have a few extra days to finish painting the exterior trim without delaying the final punch-out day, that extra time is your float. On every single job, there are certain activities that can cause massive bottlenecks. The critical path identifies the exact activities that, if delayed, will delay the entire project. If any single task on this specific path finishes late, then your whole project is going to finish late too. Tasks on the critical path are super important because they literally have zero float. Every project has at least one critical path, and it is always the longest path of tasks. Now that we have covered the classroom theory, how does this actually apply out in the real world? Let us take a closer look at 3 different hands-on scenarios where these exact scheduling concepts can completely save the day when you are working alone. The information provided is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute professional construction, contracting, or business advice. This content is derived from personal academic notes and coursework in construction management. Always consult with licensed professionals and verify local building codes before applying any concepts to real-world projects. The author assumes no liability for any errors, omissions, or outcomes resulting from the use of this information. First scenario, a one-person tiny home. The concept here is logic loops. When you are taking on the challenge of building a tiny home entirely by yourself, physical space is incredibly limited. In scheduling terms, sometimes the size of the work area limits the tasks that can be done at any one time. Because you are doing everything solo in a cramped box, you might get stuck in what feels like a logic loop where every single item is in the way of everything else. You cannot bring materials inside because there is no room, but you cannot make room until you install the materials. The solo tip is that in a tiny space, the space itself acts as a massive logic constraint. You literally cannot paint the ceiling if your heavy floor tools and miter saws are sitting right in the middle of the room. When setting up your job logic and determining your activities, you have to add clear room as a specific predecessor activity before you can start a task like install flooring. If you skip this crucial step in your planning phase, your schedule will look totally fine on paper, but you will find yourself tripping over saws, boxes, and scrap wood in reality. Second scenario, a single-family fixer-upper. The concept here is zero float. Tackling a whole single-family fixer-upper requires an incredibly tight schedule to avoid bleeding money on holding costs. Remember, Activities that sit directly on the critical path have no float, meaning any minor delay instantly pushes back your finish date. In a major residential renovation, waiting on the local city government is usually the exact thing that kills your timeline. The solo tip is to identify your zero float items as early as possible in your planning process. Almost always, these critical items involve permit approvals and administrative activities like inspection deadlines. Do not get overly excited, grab your sledgehammer, and start your demolition until you know for a fact that the permit approval task is officially done and signed off. If you start tearing down drywall too early, you might end up sitting completely idle with a gutted house. You will be losing money every single day while simply waiting for a city inspector to hand you a piece of paper. Third scenario, a house hack fix for a multi-unit property. The concept here is finish-to-finish logic. House hacking a multi-unit property usually means you are living in one unit while frantically fixing the other. You need to keep things moving as fast as humanly possible. Instead of using the standard finish-to-start linkage for everything, you can use something called a finish-to-finish link to speed things up. This type of linkage shows a relationship between the completion of two different activities. The solo tip is to use finish-to-finish logic to streamline and speed up your multi-unit renovations. You do not actually need to finish all of the demolition in the entire building before you start all of the framing. To maximize your limited solo time, you can stagger the work across the units. You can easily start framing out the bedrooms in unit, while you are just finishing up the final demolition in unit. This approach keeps you constantly moving. It ensures you are working as efficiently as possible without wasting days waiting for a broad phase to be 100% complete across the whole property. Mastering how you plan and build your schedule is the ultimate secret weapon for getting construction projects done smoothly and efficiently. By clearly understanding your work breakdown structure, deeply respecting job logic, and paying extremely close attention to your critical path, you can avoid massive financial disasters and save yourself a ton of wasted time. You do not always need a huge, expensive crew to work smart. You just need a really solid plan that accurately identifies the right predecessor and successor activities. Getting a firm grip on what actually has float and what does not will change the way you approach your jobs forever.